About 24 million people live in Shanghai, and by the end of Kane Lynch 2 I felt like I'd killed most of them. The crowded, neon-lit streets of the world's third largest city are drenched with blood as murderous psychopath Lynch drags his reluctant partner Kane through waves of gun-toting gangsters, corrupt cops, and heavily armed soldiers. Kane Lynch 2 was developed by Hitman creator IO Interactive and released in 2010 to mostly negative reviews, but in the years following it's developed something of a cult following. In this, the era of big, expensive blockbusters featuring a million warring systems, I thought it would be interesting to revisit a game so lean that it's positively starving. Kane Lynch 2 has one word in its very limited vocabulary, and that word is kill. It's a single-minded, uncompromisingly violent third-person shooter that's so minimal there isn't even a grenade button, which was a genre standard at the time. You can shoot, reload, use cover, occasionally toss an explosive fuel tank or fire extinguisher, but that's about as deep as it gets. There's a story, kind of, but it doesn't really matter. The thin narrative is little more than a means of getting the duo from one place to another, and the majority of the dialogue is Lynch shouting variations of fuck or shit as he wades into yet another mess of gunfire. But while Kane Lynch 2 is about as unimaginative as shooters get, the art direction is anything but. The grimy visuals are presented like they were filmed on a cheap DV camera, and everything looks low-res and compressed with the crushed pixels and washed-out colours of an early YouTube video. The camera shakes and wobbles as if someone's running after you, filming the slaughter. Lights give off smeary, distorted lens flares, and gore is censored with a smudge of pixels. These effects combine to give the game a scrappy, documentary-like feel. When you shoot someone in the head and see pixels rather than blood, it somehow seems more brutal. The sickly glow of Shanghai's neon signs, trash-strewn streets, and dark, dingy alleyways make for a tangibly grim setting when viewed through this unstable, grainy lens. The pacing is frenetic and the scenery is constantly changing around you, which may explain its short length. It's 5 hours long and, honestly, that's enough. Any more and you'd collapse from exhaustion. You move from wide, busy streets through apartment blocks into illegal sweatshops and up to rain-soaked rooftops. The level design, combat, story, and pretty much everything except the setting and visuals are unremarkable, but in the thick of a hectic firefight with the camera shaking and your guns blazing, it's easy to get swept up in the chaos. Your senses are overwhelmed and you forget momentarily that you're playing a completely rote, by-the-numbers third-person shooter. There are moments when you emerge from the dark alleys of the city into busy streets teeming with traffic and people. Flanked by giant neon billboards, civilians are caught in the crossfire as you exchange bullets with cops and gangsters. This collateral damage is casually shrugged off, which is bleak but fits the dark, ruthless tone of the game. The only glimmers of humanity in the whole thing are Lynch's concern for a largely unseen girlfriend and Kane talking about his daughter, but it's only touched upon. There's no character development here to speak of. Then the gruesome twosome leave Shanghai behind and find themselves fighting through dreary warehouses and grey train yards. It's a sudden, jarring change of scenery and marks the point where the game loses all of its momentum. Without the bustling neon haze of the city to flood your senses, you become increasingly aware of how little the game has to offer. And when it ends, you wonder what all the death and destruction left in your wake really achieved. Kane and Lynch successfully escape the people who rightfully want them dead, and they live to fight another day. But it's not like you're rooting for them, because they're totally unsympathetic, one-dimensional killers. My desire to keep them alive was so I could finish the game, not because I would have been crushed if they died. Kane Lynch 2 is a deeply cynical, misanthropic game with absolutely no heart, but I think that's the point. It's a brazen, ghoulish kill fest that's as twisted and immoral as its heroes, and has no pretensions otherwise. It is fundamentally a bad game. It's clunky, simplistic, unimaginative, but I love it because of its distinctive, powerful art design and its utterly unapologetic nature. Those first few hours when the streets of Shanghai erupt with gunfire are exhilarating and stressful in a way that is completely compelling, and that alone makes it worth revisiting 10 years later.